Well, this is overdue. Let's talk about Mavuika. Mavuika is the best DPS. Mavuika is the best support. Mavuika is the best overworld character. Mavuika is the Pyro Archon. Mavuika is broken and boring. It's taken me so long to put this video together. I was waiting for some more stuff to solidify results, and really because I wasn't sure what I wanted to say and add to the conversation. Before we really start talking about power creep and what Mavuika really means in Genshin Impact, let's do a basic guide. Sets, you're going to use Obsidian Codex if you use a burst, otherwise you're going to use Scroll. Support, pretty simple stuff. Weapons, the 5-star weapon, Serpent's Bind, Bellflower, Earthshaker, roughly in that order, with Redhorn Stone Thresher slightly above Serpent's Bind. When we talk about Mavuika's gameplay, at a baseline, it is burst and then hold charged attack, which is C8F, charge 8 times, then finisher. If you want to attempt to min-max your vapes or melts, you can do C3FD, C3FD, CF, which is charge 3 times, finisher, dash, charge 3 times, finisher, dash. For melt, I find the dash inconsistent. I end up applying Pyro again quickly. So I've been doing C3F, dash, C1 or CF. If you want to play with Xingqiu or Yelan, you can do C2D, which is just charge, dash, because the opening charge counts as start of a basic attack animation, which will trigger Xingqiu and Yelan. Awesome stuff. Another option for melt, very similar to the C3F, which is C4J. Charge 4 times jump, charge 4 times jump, finisher. Straightforward stuff, right? You might have already heard about this. If you haven't, I hope this was useful. I do have videos showing all of these combos. Hopefully they were playing as I was talking about them, and maybe some of them are still playing, I'm not sure. Teams play the DPS teams, which are Seatlali, Shilin and Bennett, Farina, Shilin and Bennett, Yelan, Shilin and Bennett, Seatlali, Diona Bennett, Seatlali, Rosaria Bennett, Xingqiu, Aurora and Bennett, which is the 4-star only team that I recommend. You could also do Farina, Yelan, Shilin. This is especially good if you have Seek 2 on your Mavuika. She just has a ton of attack. Seatlali, Kazuha, Shilin, very similar. Notable support teams that I want to highlight. Yeah, I want to highlight some support teams. So these are the ones that I found notable and where I found Mavuika particularly to be very useful. Cloran, Chevres, Kinich. When you play Kinich with Mavuika, you're going to put Mavuika on Scroll. You're going to use Farina or Emily, and then Bennett. Whether it be Farina or Emily, you want that character on Deepwood. Navi is Shilin and Bennett, Bristly, Bennett, and then the flex there is going to be Shilin, Seatlali or Xiangling, Chuska, Seatlali, Bennett, Mualani, Seatlali, Shilin. You kind of get the idea. These teams all look and play pretty similarly, where you benefit from the Pyro that Mavuika applies, you get the Scroll buff, play a DPS, it's pretty cool. You get the upfront damage from Mavuika's burst. It's cool stuff. Like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna try to do more Zenless content. More Genshin content is coming. Did you know most of you watching are not currently subscribed? You should subscribe. The Xiangling comparison has probably been talked to death, so I don't want to focus on it, but I do want to throw out, yeah, in practice, I find Mavuika better for these notable teams. It is what it is. Technically, the way that she's better than Xiangling is in a somewhat power creepable way. If they ever want to make a more dedicated character for that slot, they are still able to. But I don't want to just speculate and say maybe there'll be something better in the future. This is now, and Mavuika is very good here. So yes, don't sleep on Mavuika's support. It's very good. So now that we kind of got the basics out of the way, I want to be a bit more personal. So I do a lot of the DPS calcs for characters in pre-release and post-release in Genshin Impact. On paper, DPS is not a strictly reliable measure for the performance of a character. I want that to be very well understood before I talk about what I'm going to talk about, because this is going to be very sheet heavy, and I don't want people to have the takeaway be, the sheet says it, so it must be true, because that's not the entire story. If you look online, a lot of very common criticisms people have for sheet DPS is when rotations are unreasonably complex, damage from off-field characters being a scam, characters like Fischl and Farina, people like to pretend they do 0 damage. And we're actually going to talk about that. Damage versus time distribution. So this is talking about front load, back load, consistent damage, or shorter rotation times being a scam. This is primarily for Linny and Arlecchino and other similar 15-second rotation characters. So those are the common criticisms. Keep those things in mind because I do want to try to address most of it as we go. Something else I'm going to be doing, where we talk about Mavuika Melt, I've done a compilation through the different Mavuika Melt combos. So you can feel free to take away whatever result you want from whatever combo you find the most relatable, doable, easiest, something like that. Big thank you to a lot of my Discord community, specifically Prestel and Hyperwebster, for doing their own calculations, giving me something to check against, challenging my results, so on and so forth. It's a community. Check out, join us. It's always helpful to have more people doing things because the more people look at a DPS calc, more accurate it gets. It's an iterative process. To avoid accusations about bias for a specific character, if I end up including it, I do have a sourced DPS calc from your favorite tool. So don't be upset at me, be upset at them. So this is Mavuika's team DPS over the 18-second rotation. So this is split up first rotation, second rotation, and the average number, this is entirely because of Thrilling Tales of Dragonslayer, TTDS, on Seatlali. Because of that, there is a damage variation from the first rotation to the second rotation. So that is accounted for here and hopefully represented. Now, if we take out the team damage, this is Mavuika's personal DPS in these teams. All right, I want you to see these numbers. You should see a range from 71k to 116k regarding personal, and regarding team DPS, you should see a range from 124 to 80. Now, let's talk about some common themes that you'll see today. I've just roughly out of a hat picked, let's go with 3 examples, okay? We've got Arlecchino with Seatlali, Shilin, and Bennett, so the same team as Mavuika here. Yvillette with Farina, Kazuha, Shilinen. And just as an example of what team DPS can look like, here is Utao with Yelan, Farina, Shilinen. Yeah, you get the idea. So yeah, you can kind of easily see, depending on your assumptions, Mavuika herself can outdamage entire teams. Hutao herself is doing roughly 35k DPS here. It's technically not her highest personal DPS team, but it communicates the idea that teams are generally not just one character. So the other example you see here is Arlecchino. This is Arlecchino over 16 seconds. This is Arlecchino over 18 seconds, which is the same period of time as Mavuika is doing her damage. If we want to talk about the personal DPS comparison between Arlecchino and Neuvillette and Mavuika, so Neuvillette doing roughly 65k personal DPS, Arlecchino over 16 seconds being 81, Arlecchino over 18 seconds being 72. So to be as bad faith as possible, as extreme as possible, I'm gonna compare this against the highest, or essentially the first rotation, optimal combo, got all your melts, you didn't get unlucky, Mavuika, just because I think it demonstrates a point that I really want to make. If you look at that comparison, Mavuika herself does about 78% more personal DPS than Neuvillette, 40 to 60% more than Arlecchino in their respective team. It is not entirely inaccurate to say that about Mavuika in comparison to Neuvillette, but it is misleading. Did you know Farina does a lot of damage? Roughly 30k DPS on top of Neuvillette's own. Yeah, that's good. Farina does not do 0 damage. Very few supports do 0 damage. Even Seatlali is roughly 100k. The reason I wanted to specifically look at Arlecchino in this team is it's an identical team, so we can look at their performance in similar teams. If you had to know, Arlecchino can do more damage unreacted, but those are not exactly the player favorite teams. The most common Arlecchino teams are Vape, and they probably will be Seatlali Melt. Oh, this is the comparison. Sorry. If you had to know, the Overload teams and the unreacted teams are not necessarily higher DPS than Seatlali Melt anyway. Especially if we look over first rotation, which is what we're doing here. Technically, Arlecchino has a ramp up because of TTDS and her Bond of Life mechanic. She does less damage on her first rotation, except TTDS kind of evens that out So if we look at over 2 rotations, this is the difference. It's not significant enough for me to really talk about it beyond just the disclaimer that this is first rotation and second rotation is about the same, but your third rotation is about 15% better than the first rotation. So that's cool. Unfortunately, it's your third rotation. So for the sake of this, it's not necessarily very useful. Ideally, you've kind of cleared by now. Not necessarily, but ideally. That's what I try to recommend around at least. I like 2 rotation clears. Pretty comfy. Oh yeah, you want to know something else? I've been lying this entire time. You see, if you use Archaic Petra on Xiangling, you actually get slightly higher team DPS. She can actually do even more damage. Comparison to Villette. Whoa! Okay. So yeah, it is misleading to say Mavuika is 70% better than Villette. That's just not accurate. It's just not really true. What's not misleading, Mavuika is 30% better than Arlecchino or more, and even be up to 60% on their first rotation. It's not really misleading to say that, which is really the problem. And really the whole thing that I wanted to talk about, this entire thing has been a pretense to get here. So the way that game balance traditionally works is when characters have significant drawbacks, you want them to have big payoffs. So the example I'm going to talk about is Mulanni. If Mulanni can one-shot enemies, she's dominating Spiral Abyss Chambers. Arlecchino has what is basically the biggest downside of any Genshin character, which is she cannot be healed. While this may not be much of a factor if you are clearing in 2 rotations, if you aren't, it's a really big deal. And it can be kind of frustrating to deal with. In comparison, Mavuika has no downside, is easier to play, and does at least 30% more damage. Yeah, this is a balanced character. Also, you can play Mavuika as a support if you don't play her as a DP. Aww. Mavuika essentially represents the height of Genshin power creep. We've never seen anything like this before. Genuinely, nothing has ever been released like this before. It is another level, and it is potentially a bad precedent for the future, but we don't necessarily know it is the future, so I'm not going to focus on that. What I am going to focus on is I don't know if you realized how much better she was than Arlecchino because of the Spiral Abyss layout and the restrictions on teams that you can play in it. It's not fun. Mavuika and Sealali are great characters. There's nowhere to play them. You can't do anything with them. I don't understand. It's part of why it took me so long to make this video, because I was like, can't really verify anything performance-wise. I can talk about combos, but ultimately they're not that different. Yeah, Abyss is just so restrictive that where do we get the most benefit out of them? And it's really frustrating. To be completely honest, the most fun I've had with is running around Overworld with the ATC, the all-terrain Shaska. Maybe there's been B-roll. I've recorded about 30 minutes of B-roll, so maybe it's been playing over this entire thing. Maybe it's been the Spiral Abyss clears that I did record. Yeah. Mavuika is power creep to a degree Genshin has never seen before, but what do we do with it? I don't know if it's burnout speaking or what, but yeah. Regarding the next character, Mizuki, I'm treating her as an opportunity to take a break from Genshin content creation. I'll still stream it every now and then, but I'm not very interested in Mizuki. We will be back in full force for Maressa and Skirk and Yansa, Aoife. I'll do all that stuff without any problem. I'm just not very interested in Mizuki right now, and Spiral Abyss is not fun. I'm really burnt out. And I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's the game, but yeah, that Mavuika girl is power creep. We basically took a big dump all over Arlecchino and let her out back. It's wild. Neat character.